All right, back. Well, to this week, we're rolling
Double duty.
double duty. We have a great guest on today, the head coach of DePaul Catholic High School in New Jersey, Nicky Campanile. Really excited to talk to him about a lot of things, but I really, the program that DePaul has is second to none. A small school, a small Catholic school that has really become not just a power in New Jersey, but throughout the country. And he's really done a great job. He was an offense coordinator there for many years, has been the head coach for the last few years, and is really taking that program and continues to elevate it. So we're excited to bring him on here. Any thoughts before we bring him on, Coach?
No, I'm excited. Like you said, I've known Coach for a good amount of time now. Comes from a hell of a football family, watched him kind of climb through the ranks and kind of, get mentored under a great head coach in Coach McKenna in itself. And, just to see where he's continued to move this program in the right direction. Like you said, they're not really looked at, a lot of times they're the smaller school when it comes to it. They're dealing with a smaller roster size than some of these other big powerhouses, but have still kind of, taken it to a level where everybody knows who they are, not just in state, but out of state. So I'm excited.
Cool. Let's bring Coach on right here. Coach Campanile, great to have you on.
Appreciate it, guys. How's everything going? All right.
Hey, Coach. Appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, my pleasure, man. Appreciate you guys having me on.
We were just talking a little bit of your bio, but and Coach touched on it briefly that you come from a football family, and Coach D obviously knows it, having coached with your brothers, and I know obviously from knowing your brothers and you, and also from way back to when I was a youth football player. I remember going over, and this is a story probably a lot of people don't know about, but I don't remember what grade it was, 5th or 6th grade, and your father was the youth football coach.
Yeah.
And Vito,
Yeah.
well, I would say Vito was far advanced physically at a young age to everybody else, right?
Yeah.
So I remember going over there. We used to scrimmage Fairlawn, and I don't remember if I was playing running back or quarterback at the time. I just remember getting beat up. And I remember walking, and Vito was the main culprit of most of it. And I remember walking away. I was like, "Wow, I thought I was a good football player, but now I'm not so sure."
It made you question that. It made you question those skills.
It did make me question. Luckily, I continued to persist, but it really was. That's how far back it goes.
Yeah.
And, I remember playing against your brother when he was your father was coaching at Parochial Cath as an offensive coordinator.
Yeah.
And then obviously the rise of all of you guys, including yourself, each doing a different path. And that's why what really getting to was you carved out your own path, which I really like. Each one of you have done it your own way, and you've done it your way. Tell everybody how you got to where you are right now, what your path was, because I find it really interesting. You chose a different path, and I love it. You developed the craft, and now you're leading that craft as you're a head coach now.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you saying that. It's funny, my father always talked to us about, raising men of character, that guys that want to, forge their own path. So I think we've all kind of done that in our own way, And, I just remember back in, I came back and I guess 2016 was my first year at DePaul. And I had taken 2 years off. I wasn't coaching. I was kind of, doing some other things and thought I might want to take a different career path. Obviously, I didn't make it very long. But yeah, when I came back, it was kind of important to me. My brothers were becoming pretty established in the coaching world. And it was kind of important to me that I go on and try and do my own thing. So, luckily, a friend of mine, John DePalma, was the defensive coordinator at DePaul at the time, and he had introduced me to John McKenna, who ended up being, huge mentor in my life that I was fortunate enough to work for. So I took that job in 2016, not really knowing where it was going to lead, but I ended up, loving working with John, and it changed my life. I love the place, and it just, it turned out to be the place I want to be forever. I'd like to one day retire at DePaul. That's how much I like it here. And, so yeah, I think forging my own path was important. And you never want to be the guy that, well, he's just there because his brother's such a good coach, or, so I think we all kind of have that, I don't know, pride, I guess I'd call it, but you want to kind of build your own thing,
Well, and that's what I noticed. The offensive coordinator path, you turn that offense into just a juggernaut. And one of the nice things I like when watching some of your film and your offense, like you always adapted to the guys that you have. Like I've seen, listen, we know you're well educated in the run and shoot game and passing principles and all those things. But I've watched you adapt where you've had a quarterback that basically was your main runner one year. You've had quarterbacks that really couldn't run, and you've thrown and ran power game. And so I love the way that you adapt your offense to what you see come through. And that might be part of what you have to do at DePaul, but not everybody can do that. And you do a great job of that. And now as a head coach, I seen you doing that again, like making the tough decisions on who's got to be in what spot. Talk a lot about like your growth as an offensive guy, which obviously you're well known for, but also from a personnel standpoint as a head coach, like how you kind of process those decisions.
Sure. Great question. First of all, I appreciate you saying that. That means a lot to me from a guy like yourself. But so yeah, to me, I really believe in two things in offense over the years. And I think a lot of it stems from my time working with my brother Vito at Westwood. He was very influential to me. And he spent a year working for Chip Kelly when Chip Kelly was at UNH. And I think that had a huge influence on him. And so, through, an emissary, I guess, it had a huge impact on me too, because I really believe in two things. I believe in balance on offense. I think, if you can be balanced, you become really hard to defend. If you have to do one thing, then it's pretty easy to take that one thing away, So balance is a big part of what we do. We always try to be as close to 50-50 as possible in the run and pass game. And then I really believe in being multiple. We run a lot of different personnel groupings. And when you're at a school like DePaul and you're lucky enough to have a wealth of talent and depth at a lot of the skill positions, then you're able to get more guys on the field, and to me, that makes you a little harder to defend, So, when we're looking for football players, we kind of look for guys that can do multiple things, guys that can run, catch out of the backfield, that I think makes you really hard to defend. And if you can have multiple personnel groupings, I think that also becomes very hard to defend. There's also something to be said for being in the same personnel, but being able to do a lot of different things, line up in a million different formations and shifts and motions. So, we try to be as multiple as possible, I guess would be the right word, And then when I say multiple, I mean in terms of personnel groupings, in terms of formations, shifts, motions. I think we're going to do a lot more of that stuff going forward. I think we've got a young group, but I think they're really smart, and I think they understand the offense really well. So when you have that, you're able to do more, and that'll be kind of what we'll try to do going forward.
Yeah, that to me hits the core of what makes at least from a personnel standpoint, a guy who can become a fantastic coach, because the ability to adapt to personnel you have, give him multiple looks, even though you have whatever your core philosophy is, the core things you'd like to get done. And for the audience, whether someone, some coaches want to run power, some coaches want to, whatever their system is, but the ability to adapt it. And that I think is, and I think that's, you see that on film. To me, you see that on film. I see that year in and year out. If I was playing you, I really have to look at who are the players that he has this year to even have a grasp of how to defend you, because that part's going to be very difficult, and it's going to change a little bit from year to year, which is what makes you guys always tough to defend. And it's exciting to watch too. I mean, I'm sure when people come to your games, like, there's a lot of things that are going on. There's a lot of things that can happen. And then I'll tell you this: you guys play tough defense. So, you know, you have a staple there at defensive coordinator.
Yep.
That's been with you from McKenna and now with you.
Yep.
And those guys play real hard and get
Yep.
after it. Talk about the overall program philosophy and where you guys see like toughness and how the team progresses from that standpoint.
Yeah, absolutely. So you know, you had mentioned our defensive coordinator, and he's Rashid Darisaw is his name. Derek knows him. I see him laughing over there, but he's an unbelievable coach and an even better person. And we came in the same year together to DePaul, and we've kind of built this thing together. You know, he's become one of my best friends, and he's an unbelievable coach. You know, he really is. He gets everything he can out of every kid on our team.
Right. I think you guys started on the same side of the ball, right? Because you were both original offensive guys, right? When you guys came in. Yeah, I remember that. I remember that when Sheed was making his transition from, you know, ASA and do I want to coach JUCO? And, you know, I had known him from playing semi-pro ball and just kind of linked up and coached with him for actually 1 year at Mount Olive. We hide that on his resume so that he doesn't have to show that.
I never knew that.
Oh, yeah, you don't want to know about that year, but like that was just a different situation. But after that year, I kind of was like, I need to get him out of here and get him to a higher level. And then when I heard that you were going over with Coach McKenna at DePaul, it just really looked like the perfect kind of fit as everything was that's when DePaul was kind of making that change, right? And you were kind of transitioning to, hey, we're big picture now. And then, you know, you can go ahead and speak on that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, that great group they had with Kareem Walker and Hassis Dubois and Michael Dwumfor, those guys had just graduated, you know, and they had to kind of rebuild from there. And they had some really great young players and Taquan Roberson, Ronnie Hickman, Vinny DePalma. And, you know, at the time, nobody knew those names. You know, nobody knew how great of players they were going to become. But, yeah, so it was kind of on Rashid and myself to kind of help Coach McKenna, you know, continue to rebuild this program. He had built a monster. He just won 3 state championships in a row. Did an unbelievable job. And now, you know, he had a really young team, so he wanted to bring in some new coaches, and you know, that's when Rashid and I came in. And Rashid started as the receivers coach and and the special teams coordinator. Did an unbelievable job on special teams. I mean, we were so good on special teams at that point. It was incredible. And then he transitioned within 2 years when Coach DePalma retired. He became the defensive coordinator and just kind of kept that continuity. And, you know, he brings a certain level of toughness to the program. You know, he's a no nonsense guy. And, you know, he demands a certain standard from our guys and they live up to it. You know, they don't want to let him down and he just does an incredible job. And we wouldn't be anywhere near where we're at, you know, without him. That's for sure.
It's incredible what you guys are doing. Let's shift a little bit to recruiting because I'm curious. You're at one of, I don't know what they call it now, the big six, I don't know, you know.
It just keeps going up. It's just like, hey, big five, How about just like the private, the good schools up north? Like for us, we get to say up north now, right? Like those guys up north. Now we can say that, dude. It's so different.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, we were talking when we first came down there. We were talking about how good football was up north, and people were like, yeah. And I'm like,
just wait. You'll say.
You know, you guys like,
you forget it.
They've got a system going, you know. But in those schools, like, and obviously, college coaches are aware of those schools. I have a brother that coaches in college, and at Syracuse in Nunzio, and from a recruiting standpoint, we probably have a million questions on this, but I'll start simple. I'll start simple. What is the process for you when you identify a kid on your team that you think is recruitable? And then what do you do? Because people always want to know, like, how do the parochial coaches reach out? And obviously you in particular, DePaul, how do they identify a guy they think is a recruit? And then how do they start to put them through that process?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we have a coach on our staff that strictly handles college recruiting. He doesn't coach a position. He's He's not an on-field coach, but he does an unbelievable job helping me get our kids recruited. His name's Brian Murray. He's kind of a legend up here in North Jersey. Everybody knows him.
One of the best.
He is. He's awesome, man. We're
on and off. He's like the ultimate DFO slash I'll handle everything else so that you can go focus on coaching, right? Which is every program needs it, and this guy gets no credit unless you know the behind the scenes, but he makes it go, man. I really do. You're so fortunate to have a guy like that.
No doubt. And he's been here for a long time. He was Coach McKenna's right-hand man the whole way through, and now he's my right-hand man. I mean, he's another guy that this program wouldn't be, where it is without him, So he's incredible with that. I mean, he has a database of college coaches that's endless, So, but to your question, and it's a great question, because this is the thing that I spend most of my time with away from football. I'm in guidance, luckily, so I'm able to help our players in the offseason really help get themselves recruited and get their name out there. So what we do, and it's a great question, what we do is we start to identify early on, if we think a kid's going to be a high-level recruit. You want to start doing that as soon as possible, and not everyone is a Power 5 Division I football player, obviously, but those guys that are, and there's certain things that you have to have in order to do that, and I think a lot of parents and people that are involved in this don't understand, there's certain things that you just have to be. And, for instance, you can't play offensive line in the Big Ten if you're 6 foot.
Just gonna say you got to at least hit the 6 foot mark, mom and dad. Sorry, that's a bare minimum. Here we go.
And it's sometimes it's unfortunate because the best offensive lineman I've ever coached was a guy by the name of Joe Bastante, who was an unbelievable player. He played at Stonehill, 4-year starter, but he was 6 foot tall. If he were 6'2", he would have been playing in the Big Ten or 6'2.5", whatever it is. But there's certain things that you just have to have in order to be one of those Power 5 recruits, So if a guy has those intangibles, we try to identify that early on, freshman, maybe beginning of sophomore year, And the key, I think, in our league is if you can get on the field as a sophomore and do it, play meaningful snaps, then you're going to get noticed pretty much. In the Big North, the league we play in, it gives those kids exposure that you just might not get, in some other leagues. So, so the recruiting process is happening much earlier now. They're identifying these kids as freshmen, sophomores. So we try to do the same thing. We try to identify the guys that we think are going to be Power 5 guys right away. And then what we do is we kind of start building a recruiting profile for them, get the 24/7 profile going. Then really one of the biggest tools that we have now is the spring recruiting period. So I'll just speak on this for a minute because some people probably don't understand how it's changed over the last few years. But prior to 2020, prior to COVID, really, we weren't in New Jersey. You were not allowed to do any type of spring workouts for colleges. And it really hurt our kids because in Ohio and states like Florida, Texas, they're playing spring ball and coaches are getting out and recruiting their guys and offering them scholarships in the spring. And New Jersey just didn't allow that. Now, within the last couple of years, they've allowed us to do workouts, organized team workouts. And that has been huge for our kids. Just this spring, we had, I think, 6 or 7 guys in our rising junior class get Division I scholarships just through spring workouts, just by the colleges coming in and seeing them work out, So the way we do it is, once a week in spring recruiting in May and April, once a week, every Tuesday morning at 6 a.m., we get out on the field and we have a real workout. It's almost like a practice. And we'll have, 10, 12, 15 colleges out there kind of watching our kids run around and getting them the exposure that they need, and we do that for all our kids. We open it up for all our kids. Whoever would like to come is more than welcome. And, and then it's up to the college coaches to identify who they feel are fit for, for their system. And then we kind of go from there, and a lot of times what will happen is a guy will either get an offer right there, then and there after them seeing him in person, or they'll get invited to a camp, which is another huge part of the process. And if they get invited to camp, then we try and help them organize that. And Brian's essential with that. He helps me, steer kids in the right direction, which camps to go to and how to get them there and all those things. So it's a process, man. It's a big part of what we do. That's for sure.
That's a huge part of it. And how do you manage? And this is the easy next question, I guess. How do you manage parent expectations? Right. I'm sure every kid. Well, not every kid, but the majority of kids that come into your program, they have eyes on playing as high as level as they can, right?
Yeah.
That's why they're going to DePaul, right, Coach? Like they're coming, coming to you with that expectation of, hey, I'm going here to play college football. So how can you help me? Right.
Yeah.
How do you navigate that type of when it comes to those parent type of situations? Not to cut you off, Dave. Sorry.
Yeah. No, that's exactly the question. How do you manage that? How do you navigate that process with the parents?
Because I mean, look, because we see it in what we're doing, right? Because hey, showcase this or club 7-on-7 team this, or everything comes back to that question is, well, how are you going to help me get that Division I scholarship?
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. So, so I was just focusing on the Power 5 kids when I just spoke earlier, but the truth is you have to be honest. You have to, explain to every kid where they belong and what level of football that they belong at. Obviously, the thing we haven't touched on, and the biggest part of this is grades. That's the number one thing that we're going to preach from day one. We're going to check our kids' grades every 2 weeks. We're going to make sure that you're doing what you need to do in the classroom because, obviously, if you don't have grades, you don't have an option. Right. So what we do really to answer the question is we try to identify what level each kid belongs at. Right. And I don't make that decision myself. I talk to numerous people and college coaches and I get feedback from, all the different college coaches that I know and all the guys that come in to see our kids, so and through that, I'm able to kind of navigate where each kid belongs. Right. And then from there, that's when all the work gets done. It's so easy nowadays for a Power 5 kid to get recruited. I don't really have to do a whole lot of work, other than organizing, all right, let's get to this camp. Let's, meet these coaches. Let's, that's
right. You're not sitting there with a VHS tape cutting it up anymore. Those days are long gone. You know what I'm saying? Like you don't have to do any of that.
Exactly right. And those guys are those really, really super talented guys. They kind of recruit themselves, where the work comes in for us coaches is the Division 2, 3, and the FCS level players. That's where you got to find a home for every guy. And thankfully, we have found a home. Every single player has graduated from here, going back to when Coach McKenna was the head coach. Every guy that has wanted to play college football has played college football. We've had a couple that, either went into the military or just chose to maybe play another sport or just not play at all. But every guy that has wanted to play football, we've been able to find a home. And, as I'm going into my third season as a head coach, I think the football, I don't think has changed for me. I think, that's kind of always the same. I think where I've learned to be a head coach is all the off the field stuff. I think I'm really starting to understand the recruiting process a lot better and what kids fit where and where they're going to get the most money to play the highest level, because the ultimate goal, I think, for every coach in high school and every player is to go get an education, right? It's to let football finalize your education, right? And we want to do that for the least amount of money at the highest level possible. I always tell our kids that's the goal. The goal is number one, to get an education. If football can help you pay for that education, then you damn sure better look into that. All right. So again, the goal is to get the best education for the least amount of money and maybe play the highest level of football. All right. In that order, and I think sometimes people forget that and they want to put football ahead of education, and that's simply not the way it works. That's
a great point. I actually just wrote this down at 2344 where you said that, because that makes a ton of sense. To get the education, play at the highest level that you can for the least amount of money. That makes a ton of sense. And from a parent standpoint, one of the things I noticed is over the years, and I'm obviously I coached football for 20 years at the high school level, but I'm also on the other side with the camps and
sure.
The AAU side with the 7-on-7 and all that stuff, right? That's for lack of a better word. What I've noticed over the years is the parent expectations keep getting higher.
Yeah,
and it's kind of it's an interesting thing. I wouldn't say odd, but it's an interesting thing in the sense that there's more information than ever. Like,
Yeah.
it's pretty easy to go on any Twitter feed of any Division I program,
Readily accessible.
see who is committing there and see their height, weight, 40.
Yep.
You can look it up pretty quickly, right?
Absolutely.
But for some reason, they seem a little more confused in that process.
Uh-huh.
And I go back and forth. I talk to Derek about this all the time. Like, I'll even rant. I'll go and rant. I'll rant even on Twitter because I don't have to worry about someone firing me. So I'll rant on Twitter, and so it kind of like boggles my mind that as much information is out there, people don't educate themselves as to what's going on. Literally spend an hour, 30 minutes to an hour, and just kind of get a feel for things, right?
Yeah.
What when you advise your parents, right? So you have a fantastic process, by the way, of identifying recruits from high level, having Brian Murray in there, having your staff. You have a really, really educated staff, not just from a coaching standpoint, but in the process from recruiting. How do you help parents? And I'm trying to figure out how to structure this question the right way.
Yeah.
How do you help parents educate themselves along the way? So when you say to them, hey, Miss Johnny, I think he's an FCS recruit, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's always a touchy one. FCS is always the touchiest because I played FCS just like your brother Vito did.
Yep.
And I had one or two D1 offers, but almost all my offers were FCS, right? And you're always thinking like I'm a higher level, right? That's just kind of the mindset, right? Parent thinks the same way, right? How do you kind of help them educate themselves so they go into the FCS school and they say, you know what, this is where we belong, this is where we want to be?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. I think just communication, man. That is so key nowadays. When you don't communicate with your parents, then negativity is going to creep in. They're going to think that maybe you're not doing everything you need to do for their son, and that should never be the case. So I think constant communication is important. I try to keep my cell phone on at all times. I try to be as accessible as possible at all times. I think that's so important. But honesty is everything. And I think you're right. You're absolutely right. I think parents don't realize what a great opportunity FCS football is. It's high level football, especially here in the Northeast. I mean, that's the best conference in the country at the FCS level. And we just so happen to have 4 or 5 seniors this past season that are going to play in the CAA conference. And that is unbelievable football. And, it's free. It's a free education. And they're really good schools, too.
It's high academic education, too. Like, you're not just going to some football factory. Like, you're going somewhere that's going to give you a degree that really means something, too.
Absolutely.
I don't think people around the country know that level of ball at that level.
Absolutely. We had, 2 guys go to Maine this year, 2 great players. That's a great program up there that they're going to really take off these next couple of years. We had another guy go to Delaware, and another grad actually transfer into Delaware. So we have 2 guys at Delaware now, and another one just committed to Monmouth too in that last class. So, this past season, a lot of our seniors were that level players. So I can kind of speak to this, but I think it's great football. People don't realize it's completely free. It's a great education. And I think the other part of that is COVID really changed things, when it comes to that. I think a lot of these guys now, and not only COVID, but the transfer portal. Let me say that too. I think some of those guys that I just mentioned would have been FBS players prior to COVID and the transfer portal because there were just more scholarships available. Now between the 2 things, between COVID, eating up some scholarships, and then the transfer portal guys want to spend more scholarship offers on transfer guys than they do on high school kids. So I think that's made the FCS level schools that much better. I think it's raised the level of football in those conferences. And I think it's becoming a more and more viable option every day for kids.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. I think that's a great answer to it. The communication of it's always a tough thing, but in the end, when they come out of it and they see where they're going to go to their kids' games, whether they're playing at St. Lawrence or they're playing at Cornell or they're playing at Ohio State. And
doesn't matter.
you're as a parent, you're and in the end, that's really what it is. And, and you probably can think of many instances, as can I, like where a guy went to an FBS super high level program, and then, there were other guys ahead of him. Yep. And you may have thought, you know what, he probably should have went to maybe this FBS program instead, or this FCS program instead. Yep. Could have played right away. And then they end up transferring. That's where the whole transfer portal comes in, which I think that's what it is designed for, the people that get in those situations. Absolutely. It's really fascinating how that part of recruiting has changed. And I think it was Coach Garrett when we had him on. He said how important he thinks, going to a place that really wants you, right? Like that you're not begging to go somewhere, that you're going somewhere that really wants you, and that's a good fit for you. And I that kind of really resonated with me. With how is stuff like the transfer, I'm always curious, and you guys are a big program, so you guys are a smaller school, but you play at a huge level, right? Mm-hmm. And you guys are a great program at a really high level. How has the transfer? I hear a lot of different things. Like I've heard people say the transfer portal has affected high school recruiting. It hasn't, or it was just COVID. And I see all these things. I don't even know what is 100% the truth on it. Mm-hmm. I'm just curious, in your own situation, has the transfer portal affected you guys at all in recruiting and the number of high school recruits that go to different levels?
I think it has, and I think it's been kind of a negative impact on high school kids, unfortunately. I don't know that it'll stay this way, but I just think in the short period of time it's been around, I do think there are less scholarships available for the high school kid, especially at the high level, at the Power 5 level.
Right.
Their process. What's that?
I was saying it's just it's an interesting thing because you're seeing the highest of the high, right? And you're talking about the Power 5, and I want you to finish your answer, but the Power 5 levels, like the pressure to win now, right, is what overtakes it, and the fact that now I can't wait those 2-3 years to develop that senior in high school. I can just hop in the transfer portal, get a guy that's already played 2 years, plug him in, and now we can win now. I don't have to wait. That's
exactly right. And, I think the system's a little broken from that standpoint, in my opinion. And I don't know that you can get the toothpaste back in the tube at this point. But, it just is what it is. I think we have to find the best way to navigate it. But I do think it has limited some scholarships at the highest level, at the Power 5 schools. I just don't think they're offering as many scholarships as they were prior to COVID and the transfer portal. But, that being said, if you're a really, really high level recruit, they're still going to find you, no doubt about it. I just think maybe some guys that prior to 2020, if they were a lower level Division I player, they may now be, an FCS player. And that's not a bad thing. It's still great football, like we mentioned, and still a free education. So to me, that's the goal, and it doesn't matter the level you're playing at, play as long as you can for, like we spoke about, for the least amount of money.
That's I feel like you're definitely right. I mean, COVID had a strange effect on everything too, with like the extra. We're probably getting towards the last year of that.
I think this is it. Yeah.
Oh, this is it. This is the last year.
So, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I think that unfortunately affects a couple of classes, but in the long run will. And I guess on the positive side of the transfer portal, if you go at a lower level, let's say you went at D2 FCS and you are a standout, there is upward mobility.
Yes.
There is a little free agency component to it there. And it's interesting from that standpoint. I wonder also, does I don't even know if this does or not, but I've seen, me and Derek have seen some of the guys that play for our club, claim NIL deals with like, I don't know, Slash, John Smith, get 10% off type of thing.
Yeah.
I don't know if this has affected any of your players. I know in New Jersey it's legal for high school. It's not like we talked to guys in Florida it's not.
Yeah, they can't touch it.
They can't touch it. But
for us, like I know our guys can, but I also know that for those of guys that are in the coaching world, like you can't touch it. Like it has, you have, that is totally their world. Is that the same for you guys up there? Like they're doing the same. You can see some of your guys posting whatever about this, like you said, I got 10% off for this shake or this, wear my shirt or this or that, but. Murray doesn't handle that aspect of it, right?
Not yet.
He will. He will. He's gonna have that accounting right here. Here it is. Here we go.
If there's a way for it to help our kids, Murray will figure it out.
That's right.
Exactly.
But we have. Thankfully, it hasn't really been a problem for us yet. But I think down the road, it's something we're gonna have to really study and get into and make just because God forbid I would hate to see our kids get taken advantage of. You know what I'm saying? Like if there's some way they can make money, okay, absolutely. Let's do it, but let's do it the right way and make sure that it's for the kids and not somebody trying to come in and take advantage of them.
Right. There's already enough of those people in your world, right? Especially around that Big North program. You got a lot of those street agents, like I like to say, and now everybody's looking for that next, hey, how can I link up with this guy? Because eventually I can do this and he'll be that, and we talk about it, when we talked with my buddy that from American Heritage down in Florida, right? Like he deals with it. And those guys you're talking about, those guys are literally those guys that are, looking for that type of like, hey, football is my escape from this world. How do I get out? Now you start dangling a couple of those, some cash things with it. You could easily see some of those guys take a wrong turn or somebody steer them in the wrong direction. How do you kind of navigate that when it comes to, not only the athletes on your roster, but the parents as well. And even sometimes coaches and administration that are around it, because nobody knows what this whole thing is all about.
Exactly right. Yeah. It's something that, again, thankfully we have had a couple of those deals where, the 10% off deal, whatever that is, I don't know what that is, but we have had a couple of guys sign those. I don't think they're really getting much out of it. Doesn't seem like, but thankfully it hasn't really gripped high school football too much just yet, but I have a feeling it's coming and it's something we need to be prepared for, with the NIL thing, I don't have a problem with guys making money in college. I think, these athletes need to be able to make a living, and at least be able to, when I was in college, I literally couldn't afford lunch, all I did was play football. I didn't have time to have a job, and it was hard. It was really tough.
Yeah.
Right. So I do think they should be able to make some money, but I'm starting to see, and what worries me is some guys making decisions based on a quick buck as opposed to finding the right school for them in the next 40 years of their life. And the kids just aren't, they're not worldly enough yet to understand the difference, so that's what scares me about it is I really want, and I try to educate our kids as best as possible when it comes to that stuff, because, you don't want to, they might be dangling $25,000 in front of you to make to sign with their school, but that $25,000 isn't going to last very long. Right. And, whereas if you get a great education, and
you're set.
Lasts forever, right? That degree will last forever, so that's the thing that's scary about it. I think we have to be, as adults, really, really responsible. And these college coaches have a huge deal of responsibility on their plate, because to take advantage of a kid is the worst thing you could ever possibly do.
Right. And we know that there are some of those guys that are out there that are going to do that. They're going to look to pry on or prey on and kind of take advantage of, the situations that as they come. So I think for us as coaches, just as we just need to provide that, that education and kind of give them and listen, we're only about a chapter ahead of the kids when it comes to this stuff. You know what I mean? Exactly. Like we don't know, we don't know really that much more than you do, other than hey, we have a little bit more financial literacy maybe because of the, having been an adult and having gone through some of that stuff. But, at the end of the day, how it's going to happen, it's going to come down to it. And we just need to really keep an eye under it so that it doesn't go somewhere that we're really not looking for it to go.
Exactly right.
I think you touched the confusion part on the things of choosing the right places is a big deal. I remember I was an NFL agent for 6 years, and I was coaching high school football at the same time, and it was interesting seeing how guys made decisions on what agent they went to. Like if they decided not to come to me or decided to come to me, what was the reasoning and why they chose. Like I remember guys just choosing agents because they got like 10 grand more, right? And I mean, literally, I know it seems like a big deal right now, but like the goal is to get into to make it as an NFL player, not to get the 10 grand right now for the next month and a half, right? So I could see how that over time begins to, because NIL eventually, I mean, I can't really figure out how it's going to get navigated other than agencies are going to be involved. I'm sure they already are at a certain level working with like collectives and stuff like that. So, Rutgers collective or UConn collective works with this. And like I just saw with UConn just has a collective now. You might not even know this, but there's like a famous girl TikToker, their whole family. Her name is D'Amelio or something. And they're worth
She's just throwing the bag.
The family with the girl was worth like, I mean, she was like 17, 18, worth like $100 million or $50 million. And the parents and the father went to UConn. So he just formed like a fund for UConn. I just saw it. That's the only reason why I came. And so whatever they created a fund. I don't know what they're putting in the fund, but they created a fund, right? So those things are going to crop up more and more. Like
Rutgers has their it's almost like a baseline salary, right? Like you go to Rutgers, everybody gets 30 grand.
Right.
Here's how it works, right?
But that's the Rutgers chip-in fund. Like I call like Rutgers has a fund, right? And all these people are putting in. Now you're going to have individuals like a D'Amelio, which I'm a UConn. Obviously, I played at UConn. I'm all for it. Let's get some good players in there. But as far as from a recruiting standpoint, it's going to make it even stranger because it's not just like
the more money you have, the more you're going to be able to do.
Right. Individuals now create fun.
Hey, what do we need? A receiver? All right, well, here's his NIL deal money. So get him on campus because look, we talked about it. Like, you go back to the whole, we talked about it. Like this is what's going to happen. Right. And I've heard, Coach Shiano speak on it before. And he's what's to stop guys now from turning an NIL deal into another scholarship? Right? How do we navigate that?
They are actually
right. So how do you navigate that? So there's a reason that Texas A&M and Jimbo can go out there and freaking, throw out.
I've heard of
scholarships because here's what it is.
I know of specific instances where guys have gotten. Now, no one's ever going to say it. Guys have gotten walk-on stuff and are going for free. So that to me is interesting.
Yep.
I don't know how, I know that has to be. I mean, I'm sure they circumvent. I don't know how they circumvent it exactly, but that to me is incredible how that is actually able to happen where they can.
They're able to that with NIL. I guess.
Yeah.
Yep. That to me is something they need to fix. I may be a little behind here. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, I think that's something they really need to fix because, now it's not an even playing field, right? If Michigan can offer 85 scholarships and then they can get 15 guys to walk on with NIL money, that's like having 100 scholarships, right? Whereas other schools can't do that. For instance, some of these lower level schools that just don't have the money to do that, now I don't think that's a fair playing field, obviously, Alabama, A&M, they have unlimited funds, right? So they can just get any kid they want to walk on and not have to pay for their education. So I think they got to really look into that at the NCAA level because that really kind of unevens the playing field.
Yeah, because it goes back to like the 80s, really, because they changed all these rules in the I think when I was in high school, where you had 85 scholarships and all.
Yeah.
And I think FCS, I don't remember what it is exactly, 63 or 65, but they changed that because Penn State, used to offer 200 guys, bring in 200 guys on scholarship.
Yep.
Bring in 200 guys on scholarship. And I remember at Saddlebrook, they used to tell me this story all the time when I was coming through. And there was this guy who was this great athlete from the 70s. He was like at the Cath Elite. He was, could have went anywhere in the country, but Penn State he went to Penn State, and he was basically sat on the bench for 4 years as like, but he would have started at Temple. You know what I'm saying? Like, would have been a star at Temple. But they had him over there because they didn't want to play Temple and have to play against those players.
Right.
So I guess
those guys go about it like it's almost like you're and look, and we can relate it back to you, Coach, right? At DePaul, I'm sure you see it where other guys around here kind of talk to guys that like, hey, am I going to go there? But, why don't you come to me just to keep them away from you?
Absolutely.
Like, hey, you're going to be this, you're going to be that, you're going to be this for me when, probably not going to happen. And but now that guy could have been your starter because at a school like back and forth, whatever it is, it's a different situation. You start to see it. And it's something that I'm sure you deal with.
Certainly. Yep. Definitely goes on.
It's wild stuff. Where are you looking to take the program for the future? What are some goals that you guys have move forward the program?
It's a great question.
Great question. So, John McKenna, my predecessor, is kind of my mentor. He did an unbelievable job here, man. He won 5 championships in his last 7 or 8 seasons, 8 if you count COVID, but 5 state championships basically in 7 years. And I mean, you literally, I don't know if you can do better than that, but it is, being the next head coach here, it is my job to get us, to build this program up to the next level, and I think the only way to go from where he left it is up, So I think to answer your question, our goal in the short term is to become as good or better than everybody in New Jersey, right? And I think, we are certainly not at that point yet. We certainly have no business even claiming to be anywhere near that, but that's the goal, right? I think we play in such a great league. Week in and week out, we're playing top 10 teams in the state, So our goal is to be as good or better than all of them, and being a small school, people used to laugh at me when I said that, but we're in a great area, at DePaul. We're in a great location. We have tons of talent on our team right now. I'm really happy with where we're at right now. Not only this team, but as a program going forward, I think we've got some great kids in our program, and they appreciate the opportunity that a school like DePaul is affording them. And to me, that's the most important thing. To have kids in your program that are ungrateful is, not a good thing. Certainly not anything that we would want. Luckily, we have great kids, and I really think we're headed in the right direction. I think this is the most talented team I think we've had. Not by any means the best team. We certainly have a lot of work in front of us, but I think it's as talented as a team as we've ever had. We're still young, and we're inexperienced in some areas, but I really think we got a good group here. A lot of really talented guys that are great kids and great young men. So I'm happy with where we're at. I think to answer your question, we want to become the best team in New Jersey. That's really Coach McKenna set the bar so high. There's really no other place to go. So we'll in so doing, we want to start playing some more out-of-state teams. We got a great game with Bishop McDevitt coming up this year, September 1st. They're a great team out in Harrisburg, PA, and then we want to start to play some teams nationally. We want to start to travel more and get a little bit onto the national scene.
That's awesome, and I think you're going to continue to do that. There's no doubt in my mind about that. It's awesome seeing what you're doing. I have one final question. I don't know if Coach D has any more questions, but I have one final question.
Yes, sir.
And I'm not actually, I didn't even look to see if you guys did play each other or not. But have you played your brother at all? Okay,
yep.
You have. What is it like when you guys play? And your father is a freshman coach or at Berg Catholic, right? So what is it like to play against your brother and your father?
and it's not easy, I'll tell you. So my father won't even come to the game. He stays home, doesn't watch it, won't come, nothing. So it's hard on him for sure. It's hard on my mother. And I've had to play against Vito 3 or 4 times. A couple of times when I was an assistant and he was at Seton Hall. One time I was assistant when he was at Bergen. And then last year as a head coach was the first time I had played against him. And that was hard. And we got our butt whooped. But the whole week leading up to it was really tough. And the hardest part for me wasn't my brother. It was the fact that I have 2 nephews on the team over there. My godson, Dominic, who's, one of my people I'm most close with on the entire planet. He's my nephew and my godson, and he's the starting quarterback there. My nephew Michael's a receiver there. They're both going to be juniors this year. And it's hard enough playing your brother, but when you got to play your nephew and you're trying to design blitzes to sack your nephew, ooh, that's not a lot of fun, man. That's, and it's hard to, and then you're playing him and he's playing really well. And it's like, for him, and then half he wants to knock him out of the game, So it's not easy. It's not easy.
It's rare that,
it's a great experience.
It's rare that happens, but it's also rare, obviously, to have a family. I mean, there should be a Netflix documentary on you guys. A family of coaches. Obviously, you guys are all players, but really, your mark is as coaches, and it's left this mark on thousands and thousands and thousands of players, which I really think is unique in the sport of football. You hear about 1 or 2, you might have a couple of brothers or a father, son here or there, but to have, what is it, between your father and you have 4 brothers?
Yeah, 3 brothers, 4 boys. Yeah, 3 brothers.
4 boys, right. Yeah. So 5, between the 5 of you touching so many lives, to me, I'd have to really research it. Next time we come in a conversation, I'm going to go research this and see if there's anybody that has as many family members as coaches as you guys do, and not just coaches, by the way.
No, like high level. This isn't just like the hey, the coach, whatever. Yeah, like NFL, college, Power 5, Division 1, and then you're talking probably 2 of the most, obviously 2 of the best programs in New Jersey, but national powerhouses as well.
With AI becoming so prevalent, Nicky, we're gonna have to go and get someone to extract some DNA from you guys on the coaching side, so we can replicate.
We'll figure out how to bridge that money.
Replicate that down the line.
You don't have to worry about NIL.
The nation of super coaches.
Yeah,
it's really great. Well, thanks so much for being on. Anybody who wants to find you on Twitter or reach out to you, where can they find you?
Yeah, so Instagram and Twitter, Coach Camp 01. Pretty active on Twitter. It helps with the recruiting process of our guys. So yeah, always on there. And then, I myself and Brian Murray, aforementioned Brian Murray, we run the social media accounts for DePaul Catholic football too. So you can always reach us on there as well.
Awesome.
Coach, appreciate you. Really. Thanks a lot for coming on and, letting guys kind of see, what kind of makes you and your team go. And like I said, I appreciate everything you've done. For me personally, in terms of mentorship, it's just always a guy there to bounce some stuff off of and whatnot. So I really appreciate you letting this knowledge out to some others so they can kind of see how things should be done.
Nah, this is awesome, man. This was a lot of fun, man. Most fun I've had in a while.
That's you got this week. Yeah, this is nothing. This is a good kickoff.
Awesome.
All right, Coach. Have a great day.
Thanks, Coach. Take care, bud.
If we don't get our ass kicked this year, maybe you guys have me back on a little later on. All right.
Well, we definitely will. Absolutely. We'll definitely have you on, Coach.
All right, Coach. Thanks.
All right, Coach. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Thanks.
That was phenomenal. That's what it's all about.
He's got a listen. It's to come from. You know what I mean? Because he wasn't the brother in coaching. You know what I mean? It was kind of, hey, okay, let me get into this. And he kind of cut his own path a little bit, right? And then when he was like, yeah, I'm going to go to DePaul, right? Kind of leave Vito and kind of go do his own thing. And look, you and I have known Coach McKenna for God knows how long, right?
Yeah,
I mean, we've worked with him whenever. I've played against him. I've, coached against him, worked with great guy to learn from, right? And he's in a great spot, It's not really a school that, they're always they're forgotten about a lot, right? It's the Bergens, it's the Boscos, it's the St. Peters, right? DePaul comes in kind of on that second tier type thing, where it comes to it, just because they're a smaller school, but they can compete with anybody, and with that guy at the helm, I think he just has it in the right direction.
Yeah. I love his demeanor. He's got great perspective on everything. Like really, you could see that he's taken a piece from all the different, his brother, his brothers, his father, different things, and made his own way of doing things, which is what I really love.
He's created his own little trail, his own little path, right? Like, because he could have easily just I'm sure he could easily be at Bergen Catholic right now as his brother's OC. Just
right.
This is cool. Coaching his nephew, right? Like, this is great. Like, hey, my nephew's the quarterback, right? But no, he's on the other side trying to dial it up, how to knock him out of the game. So, and listen, and I think it's the same the other way. That kid's probably trying to say, hey, I'm going to throw 5 touchdowns on my Uncle Nick's defense.
Absolutely. There's no
right. It works the same way. So. Yeah. People really, what people don't understand too is you look at the entire family, right? Like he's the youngest, he's the head coach at DePaul. The oldest is the head coach at Bergen Catholic, now, right?
Is he around, like your age? Is he?
I think he's a little younger than me, actually.
Okay.
Or no, I'm sorry, he's older than me, but only by like a couple years, maybe like 2 or 3, something like that. And then, obviously Nunzio is the tight ends coach at Syracuse, and then Anthony's the linebackers coach with the Miami Dolphins, and has been through 2 or 3 head coaches, which in the coaching world, if you survive a head coaching change, right, and you're still on the staff, not once, but twice, maybe 3, you're obviously doing something right. So,
I think it's really cool. It's funny because I had to open up with that story. Now he was probably like a baby.
Oh, he was probably a baby.
Yeah, probably a baby. Maybe not even born yet. I mean,
he loves the fact that his dad doesn't go to the games.
That was interesting. Yeah. I mean, I have so many questions that if I like to keep everybody under an hour, you know what I mean? And just because of the time, and
we didn't even touch on any of the football knowledge stuff, because from quarterback play to offensive strategy to all that kind of stuff, and just overall his whole coaching demeanor in terms of, he really lets Rashid, his defensive coordinator, really kind of do your thing. I mean, when you go there, and that, a couple of those things, I'd love to talk to him about kind of how, he's always got a smaller roster. So maybe he's not a true 2 platoon team where offense, defense, right? They try and do it as much as they can, but they probably have guys that have to go or have to do double duty, Also, the other thing I love that and one thing, this is what I'll take away from it, and I'll end with this, is I think there's a double-sided sword to using multiple formations and groupings and all that stuff. Not only are you maximizing your opportunity to do the best you can, but you're also utilizing more players, which now changes your roster where, hey, I go to DePaul, I can play, right? It's not just the same guy on the field for the same sets. You can now put guys in and out. Maybe guys are, hey, this guy is good at this right now, but as a young guy, so he can play right away. I think that groupings, multiple formation, all that kind of stuff, where you can get more players on the field in key roles and doing things sooner, I think just helps your program overall in terms of getting the players that you want.
Well, in the long run, it actually does get you the players you want. And I think what's interesting about it is you do it initially out of necessity. Like I've always done it out of necessity. Multiple.
I have to do this.
Right. So figure out how to utilize a kid who has multiple skills helps you when you're trying to when you might have to play someone that's bigger and stronger than you. or has more bodies than you or whatever, right?
Right, which is usually always the case when it comes to DePaul, right? Which was, I know for a long time, with Coach McKenna, they never wanted to, they just couldn't play out of state because they would, that would beat them up for the entire year. Now they just didn't have the amount of dudes, right, to do that. But now, him talking about traveling, I'd love to go see those guys play somebody, on a national level, because they can definitely compete.
Bishop McDevitt.
We've seen some great players come out of there,
Bishop McDevitt will be that's a
good test.
They're very good. If they take it to those guys, that'll be really because that's a team I always look at the Pennsylvania they're always up there.
Right. Also in that parochial B, so if they do get in those playoffs, look, which staple, right? They're in. They just got to be who they don't have to run that double gamut of, I have to play Bosco again. I have to play Bergen again. I have to play Joe's again, right? Like now they're on this side. Okay, I got Red Bank Catholic, St. Thomas Aquinas, right? A couple other schools in there. And that's not taking anything away from them. That's just saying like, hey, here's your reward for running through this gamut of hammers the entire year as a smaller school, right? So
no doubt. Awesome podcast. Great stuff. That was a ton of fun. Let me find my kickoff to get us out of here. Great podcast once again. Kudos to you.
Good, man. Appreciate it. Always a good day. I like getting them in the mornings. They're good, those guys. And now he gets to go enjoy
doing well.
That's it. We're good.
All right. Until next time.